What's up, everybody? We are back. John Delarose, delarose.com. This is like a little unauthorized fanzine sort of setup called Steve Ditko in the 1960s. And it is edited by Jay Ballman. And what he did was just really go through, and there were all these fanzines in the 60s. You didn't have internet message boards or nothing, so everybody made magazines talking about the books. People subscribed to them. They'd print as many as they could get. And they'd actually get the Marvel artists sometimes to send in art, or they'd make their own copies of art in some instances, of course, and just do it that way. And Steve Ditko would actually write letters back to these fanzine people, and sometimes Stan Lee would also. So you read through this, and you get a lot of history of what was going on at the time and what people actually thought about the books at the time, which is pretty neat because we have a distorted view of history a lot of the time on some of this stuff. And it goes through Steve Ditko's career in the 60s until he quits Spider-Man. Everybody's kind of curious about what's happening when he quit Spider-Man. This is a essay right here, which is great. Steve Ditko and Memories of Another Day. And this is a guy who got to meet and hang out with Steve Ditko a bunch and actually talk about him. He took a lot of those photographs in here of Ditko. Neat stuff. So I'm really cool first-hand source of what was going down back then. And as you see, Ditko contributed art to these zines, and these aren't really reprinted in a lot of spots, so you get to check out some cool Ditko art. And neat. This is just pure comic history right here that you don't get to see very often. This is a Steve Ditko letter, another Doctor Strange sketch, just lots of stuff like that. Now, he leaves Marvel Comics about halfway through this book, and there's lots of conjecture about that in here, which is really fun to read about people conjecturing at the time and talking about how much they really don't like John Romita as much as Steve Ditko. Very different style of art coming in there. And he goes to DC, or Charlton's version of DC at the time. You actually get an interview. Steve Ditko stopped doing interviews after the 60s, so not very much in here. Some cool stuff. And Steve Ditko always gave like a sort of brief biography to the interviewer before he actually gets into the questions, which is kind of neat. And he talks about artists that he likes and things like that. So you get to learn a little bit about him at that point. He's very to the point and very much on topic with just like the art. Very cool stuff. Towards the end of this, of course, like I said, he's in Charlton, and they start talking about like the Blue Beetle and things like that. And Steve Ditko has already become a man of mystery at this point. There's another story in here where Steve Ditko went to the first Comic-Con, the New York Comic-Con, I think it was 1964, and how he was supposed to be a guest, declined, and then actually showed up anyway, and how the guy who was running it kind of got to know him and all that. Very cool. So, huge comic history. I was so excited to read this. I actually dropped a bunch of my comic reading and just picked this up and read this. I highly, highly recommend this for people who are into Spider-Man, comic history, Marvel Comics, the 1960s Americana, anything like that. And I know these guys have put out a second book called the New York Comic Con, which actually goes over that entire Comic Con. So I'm going to be picking that up also just as a historical interest. Check it out. I'll put this link in the description because this is an indie book and I want these guys to succeed. So, good stuff. Hit that like and subscribe button. We will be back soon.